So recently, the president of the World Economic Forum, Børge Brende, put out a warning. He said the world might be facing three bubbles at the same time. One in crypto, one in AI, and one in government debt. And he also pointed out that global government debt levels are now the highest since 1945. Now, on the surface, these three things look completely unrelated. One is virtual assets, one is a tech race, and the other is government finances. But in reality, they're deeply connected. Because all three of them represent the same thing: human society overborrowing from the future. Crypto is borrowing trust, AI is borrowing imagination, and sovereign debt is borrowing time. And this whole idea of using the future to pay for the present is basically how modern finance works. So when the market, technology, and governments are all doing the same thing, pushing risks forward and delaying the real cost, then the bubble isn't just one bubble anymore. It becomes a system-wide phenomenon. And this kind of front-loading trust always looks great at the start. Money flows in, prices go up, the narrative sounds amazing. But eventually, they all hit the same wall. What happens when there's no future left to borrow from? How do you keep the whole system running? So today, I want to dive into these three bubbles, how they're shaping the present, and what they mean for our future. Artificial intelligence is widely seen as one of the most powerful technologies of our time. But according to Børge Brende, AI may already be turning into another rapidly expanding bubble. He points out that capital is flowing into the AI sector at an unprecedented pace. Valuations are detached from real returns, creating short-term wealth. But over the long run, AI may reshape the job market and replace parts of the white-collar workforce. And that's not a future scenario. It's already happening. Many jobs once considered stable professions, translation, design, accounting, even entry-level programming, are now being taken over by automation tools. Skills that people spent 10 or 20 years building suddenly feel like they've lost their value in the wake of AI's breakout. But in my view, the AI bubble is not just overheated investment. It is, fundamentally, a capital race. Right now, every major economy, the United States, China, the European Union, and even the Middle East, is competing for dominance in artificial intelligence. This competition isn't driven by market logic. It's driven by strategic fear. No one dares to stop, because stopping means falling behind. So even though most AI companies still have no stable profitability, capital continues to pour in, creating a burn cycle that simply cannot slow down. The reality is straightforward. Very few AI projects can generate sustainable returns. But under global competitive pressure, this bubble won't contract. It will continue to expand. And in the future, the most fragile part of the AI bubble won't be the technology. It will be the capital layer. When the market enters its elimination phase, a large number of startups and mid-sized companies will disappear. Even today's industry leaders. If they lose technical leadership or cash flow, it could collapse overnight. Because what supports this industry today is not stable cash flow. It is trust and imagination. And once investor confidence shifts, capital exits immediately. No one will give you time to adjust. This is the core danger of the AI bubble. The speed of capital. It rises fast. It falls even faster. And when capital leaves, the story evaporates with it. To summarize, the AI bubble is not a valuation problem. It is a structural one. It is a capital-consuming system driven by policy and powered by competitive pressure. And this system cannot stop, because behind it is not only greed, but a deeper fear, the fear of being left behind by the age. Børge Brende highlighted that global government debt, as a share of GDP, is now at the highest level since 1945. And even in a high interest rate environment, countries are still borrowing more, making the whole system less and less sustainable. But honestly, the issue isn't just how much debt we have. It's that the entire world has slipped into a mindset of borrowing more just to keep the game going. Governments take on new debt to pay off old debt. They use monetary policy to temporarily lower the pressure. And the whole thing works like stacking cards. Everyone is rolling over their liabilities. And it's basically a question of who runs out of room first. And here's the ironic part. This isn't something that will suddenly stop. Because for any government, a direct blowup is unacceptable. So the only thing they can do is stretch the problem out and slow down the moment of impact. In other words, the bubble might not actually burst, but the cost will show up in other ways. Inflation, a weaker currency, and higher living costs. Every time a government prints money to handle a crisis, what they're really doing is using inflation to quietly reduce their debt burden. And every bailout, every rescue, just makes the next round of risks even bigger. The sovereign debt bubble isn't just a financial issue. At its core, it's a case of system-level over-leverage. But the reality is this: these bubbles might never explode outright. Because with policy intervention, governments will do everything they can to keep the situation inside a manageable range. They're not going to let the system collapse. Instead, they'll use time, inflation, and currency devaluation to slowly absorb the risk. And this kind of slow, controlled delay may look stable on the surface, but really, it just pushes the cost into the future, and eventually, ordinary people pay for it through shrinking purchasing power. According to Børge Brende, cryptocurrency is one of the 3 major potential bubbles right now. He points out that valuations in the crypto market have clearly disconnected from fundamentals, with capital overly concentrated in a handful of platforms and tokens. Market trust is no longer based on technical strength, but on volatility and sentiment. But in reality, crypto has already been normalized. It's no longer making headlines. There's no big wave of outside money coming in. The market has turned into a closed loop. And with weak regulation, market making and insider trading have basically become standard practice. Price movements are increasingly man-made, not driven by real demand. The whole market looks active on the surface, but the liquidity is largely an illusion. And the deeper issue is this: the purpose of pushing prices up isn't to increase liquidity. It's to use leverage to make money. This operating model has been part of crypto for a long time. But because there's no regulation and no transparency, it slowly became the new normal. Money keeps circulating within exchanges. Prices get stacked higher and higher by layers of leverage. And the later retail investors enter, the greater their risk becomes. Eventually, after most retail traders get wiped out, new players struggle to come in, and the entire ecosystem starts losing blood. On the surface, crypto still shows price movement. But behind that, there's no real growth left, only a self-reinforcing bubble supported by internal leverage. When Bitcoin was first created, it became a global sensation because of technological innovation. It represented decentralization, transparency, and immutability. And blockchain security was its core selling point. But here's the real problem. This technology is based on an architecture from more than a decade ago. Its original design hasn't really changed, with no active stewardship, no regulation, and no major upgrades. The question is, should we still believe that in today's era of rapid technological evolution, it remains truly unbreakable? Especially when quantum computing keeps advancing, and when computing power can break encryption in seconds that once required hundreds of years. Is this notion of security just a matter of time? Bitcoin was once a symbol of innovation, and although some people still maintain it, the situation is basically like a huge ship with no captain. People are repairing the hull and patching cracks, but no one is choosing the next destination. It won't sink, but it also won't move forward. The crypto bubble is really the overlap of 2 issues. One part is the illusion of liquidity, and the other is technological stagnation. And ultimately, the risk isn't the asset itself, it's the possibility that the entire system gets overtaken by a new technological era. But the biggest difference between this bubble and the AI or sovereign debt bubbles is this: no one is going to save you. AI and debt bubbles have governments, central banks, and policy intervention behind them. So even when problems appear, those systems will try to control the explosion. But crypto has no central authority, no regulation, no rescue. When something goes wrong, the outcome is direct liquidation. This is the bubble that can truly hurt people. Because once trust collapses, no one can stop both capital and confidence from evaporating at the same time. Børge Brende warns that these three bubbles, cryptocurrency, artificial intelligence, and sovereign debt, may all exist simultaneously. But for most people, it makes no difference whether they burst or not. If they burst, the world faces a financial crisis. If they don't, the problems will not disappear. They will simply be transformed into long-term inflation. Because both markets and institutions are now trapped in a cycle where stopping is not an option. Everyone involved is pulling value from the future to sustain the present. And eventually, that burden shifts to ordinary people through weaker purchasing power, higher living costs, and assets that slowly lose their real value. So the real question is not whether these bubbles will burst. The real question is this: if they don't burst, are we ready for persistent structural inflation? Investing can help protect against inflation, but you must understand exactly where the risks lie. Because in the end, the only true winners are the ones who survive the entire cycle. If you found this breakdown useful, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll keep sharing clear, fact-based analysis to help you understand what's really happening in the global markets and how it connects to your own financial future. Stay tuned, because in a world this uncertain, having the right perspective is already a form of protection.